In politics, a new Marquette Law School poll today looking at both sides of the upcoming statewide races in next month's election, as well as opinions of the first month and a half of the Trump administration. The poll was conducted over a week in mid-February after the spring primary and interviewed 864 registered voters across Wisconsin with a margin of error of plus or minus 4.6 percentage points. And we welcome in Dr. Charles Franklin, director of the Marquette Law School Poll. Let's start with Wisconsin's view on President Trump. Among registered voters, the difference between approval and disapproval, only 3%, well within the margin of error. And of course, Democrats and Republicans each skewed to their individual sides.
Yeah, it's 48% approve, 51 disapprove, but well over 90% of Republicans approve of the job he's doing. Oh, well over 90% of Democrats disapprove. It's stark, nearly perfect polarization between the two parties in their views of the new president.
But there is a sizable amount of independents who disapprove of the president's performance so far.
That's true. On balance, independents are disapproving rather than approving. Independents here in Wisconsin make up about 13% of the voting population, the registered voters. So they're an important point, especially when the two parties are this polarized. You put that, if you got two parties that are close to the same size and they're split equal and opposite, then you get a really close overall approval. It's those independents that could shift this in a little bit positive or a little bit negative direction. This month, they're a little bit negative on President Trump.
You also polled people on the president's policies and actions, and many answered negatively against freezing spending, closing agencies, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, and tariffs. But many also said they supported his deportation of immigrants who are in the country right now illegally.
The support for deportations is around 60%, a little above that. That's gone up not much since October, the last time we asked about it. On the other hand, when we ask about deporting people who've been here a number of years, have jobs and no criminal record, it's a 50-50 split. That 50-50 split, though, is a little different from October when we asked about people who are here and no criminal record. Only 39% supported that in October. That's up to 50% support now. Whereas the harsher measure, just deport everybody who's here illegally, that has had the higher support of around 60 for months now through the spring, summer, and fall.
Let's shift now to those statewide races. When asking registered voters, you found a large percentage are still unfamiliar with the candidates for state Supreme Court and state superintendent.
Yeah, I think that is an important takeaway from this poll, that 38% said they didn't know enough about Schimmel to have an opinion of him, favorable or unfavorable, but 58% said the same about his opponent, Crawford. And in the race for state school superintendent, it was 64% not knowing enough about the incumbent, Underly, and 71% not having an opinion about her challenger, Kinzer. That is maybe not unexpected. We have a month to go for these races. On the other hand, we started interviewing people the day after the February primary for the state superintendent's position, and yet the two candidates that emerged from that primary are well over 50% who don't have an opinion of them. Now, there's a month to go to change that, but I think the takeaway is the public has a month and they still have a long ways to go in forming opinions about all four of the candidates on that April 1st ballot.
Now, when looking at people who are certain to vote and enthusiastic, many of the candidates actually had a low or even negative net favorability, except for Kinzer.
That's right. Kinzer stands out as the one of the four with net positive favorability, more people favorable than unfavorable. That's pretty striking, but she also is the one that is the least well known. So I think the takeaway there is that people who know her have a more positive opinion of her, but a vast number of people don't know her yet. When we zoom in on these people who are very enthusiastic about the election and say they're certain to vote, then a higher percentage have opinions of these folks. In Schimmel's case, the percent don't know drops to just 15%, and Crawford drops to 36%. But those are still big numbers when we think of them in comparison to a November election, where throughout the fall we would not see such large percentages with no opinion about candidates.
Also, despite these races being nonpartisan, you clearly found partisan favorability in candidates, with Republicans favoring Schimmel and Kinzer, while Democrats favor Crawford and Dr. Underly.
Yes, the partisan leanings of the respondent clearly relate to whether they have a favorable or unfavorable view of the candidates. Though it's interesting that there are very small partisan differences in familiarity with the candidates. So you might think Republicans would be more familiar with the Republican-favored candidate and vice versa for the Democrats. But actually, there's very modest differences in familiarity there. It says that when people do form an opinion of these folks, that opinion is informed by their partisanship. But for a lot of people, they just don't know enough yet to know which candidate goes with which side or what the candidates stand for. We asked whether people were clear about what Schimmel stands for, clear about what Crawford stands for. And with Schimmel, it was a little over 50%, 51% that thought they had a clear idea. With Crawford, it was 41%. But a big share in both cases still said they just hadn't heard enough yet to know what the candidates stood for.
Dr. Charles Franklin, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.